Good. Well, thanks, Nikki. Maybe I should ask a question first. Is how do I serve everybody the best? I can say tons of things, but I mean, is it going to be of value? So maybe I should pose a question first. What would you like me to share that would add value? And I mean that sincerely.
I had a speaker at TEDx San Francisco, Amin Tufani, and he said we have to have a metrics that tells us the things, that gives us a scale on the things we know we don't know. He calls it lygometry. Always feeling with this open question, what do you want to know and what do you expect? It feels like I'm not sure if I can measure what I don't know. The curiosity of Marcus.
I've got a few things, Reinhard.
Go
So,
ahead.
what would be quite nice is to take your take on the political situation in Republic of South Africa, and I guess COVID and lockdowns and what impact that's had. From your own experience, the difference between Republic of South Africa, other European countries, and Silicon Valley, where you've done work in both. And I think a general conversation just to scratch the surface of what is clearly a lot of stuff which you've got to share.
Okay, well, maybe I should start a 5-minute intro of where I come from, and then we'll take to South Africa politics, Silicon Valley, the copper, and those things. So, one of the things you need to know about me is I have ADD or ADHD, as the psychologist would love to define it, which is to me in my world a great blessing. The only problem is I forget things. So, Marcus, you might have to remind me. So what I do from day to day is I'm a coach. So I work with mainly, which I would like, which we would know as corporate clients. I actually work with anybody. Corporate clients just have more budget. So, and I have two sons, and the one is studying medicine and the other one is next year in grade 12. So I probably need a little bit of corporate clients, and so they pay those bills. So I'm thankful for that. I do not hang any value to people. Sometimes talk about are you an executive coach? I'm like, if you understood the concept of coaching, you would understand there's no such thing, because coaching is it's would be to say, are you an executive psychologist? Well, what does that mean? Are you a psychologist that only works with executives? The same psychologist that pitch up with the adolescent pitch up with the person who runs Apple. I mean, it's and coaching is the same. But if you want to make money, maybe you should have such a label as an executive coach. Where Marcus, I also, it's so funny, the only thing I share with you in England is I have a master's degree from Middlesex University in London, but I have never set foot in Middlesex University. Yeah, so
Good.
no, I didn't buy it off the internet either. I just want to tell you, Stellenbosch University had a deal with Middlesex when they flew all their faculty actually to South Africa to our business school, and the late Mike van Outering ran the program. Which I love. So that's sort of my background. My passion is innovation and coaching. So when I years ago wrote, you have to write a thesis, then people think you're clever. I thought, well, coaching and innovation, there's a lot of similarities. If you think of the concept of design thinking, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, I love those sort of things. I like the whole IDEO concept of Tim Brown. And then I said, okay, well, great. How can I merge these two sort of fields? And that's sort of what I did. How did I get involved in Europe? So maybe I should explain to you why I think South Africa is a great country. When in South Africa, and I don't know my previous Africa speakers, I'm sure they have also a lot of praise of South Africa. Um, I think in South Africa you have a can-do attitude. You know, it's an interesting thing. Years ago, I was bored. Being having ADHD, you get bored very easily. So I sat there and I Googled. Google did exist. I Googled Europe, and the second word was innovation. You know, and lo and behold, the first hit was a company was called Innovation Europe. They don't exist anymore. But I thought, these guys looks quite interesting. They're in Germany. I can speak a little bit of German. I'm actually a German citizen, although my German is atrocious, as I told Nikki. I was born in South Africa, but my father came from Germany when he was, I think, 28 to South Africa. Half my family is still in Germany. They think I'm crazy, but that's okay. So anyway, so I Googled these guys and I said, "Hi, I'm here in Cape Town. I see you have a great company called Innovation Europe. I would love to know what you do." Long story short, 2 or 3 months later, they were in Cape Town and we did a workshop together on innovation and their perspective, our perspective. And I think I'm not unique in that say of being a South African. Lots of South Africans are like that. We like, hey, why not? Let's try it. And I think nobody told us the rules is like formal, you know. I remember years ago, 4 years ago, I won't mention the names of the company. So, and I'm still a client of theirs. And so they're a German company and one of the big, more telecommunication groups, whatever you want to call them, no guesses. And I was asked to run this coaching program. And this coaching is very well designed. It was, they said, coaching is a great way. If we can teach our experts to use coaching skills, they can transfer a lot of those skills to people. And we want that. So we don't want them to just tell them what to do, maybe a coaching. And I thought, what a wonderful way of doing it. Thanks for asking, you know. But they warned me. They said, listen, Reinhard, you have to understand those Germans. There's rules and regulations, and it's like, this is how it's done. And so I listened. My mother taught me, well, in the beginning, you keep your mouth shut and you and ah. And I listened for a year and I did the program as they wanted me to do it. And it wasn't a bad program, really, it wasn't. But I gained confidence and changed it to what it is today. But the point I want to make, people say to me, yeah, but there's rules. You can't, this is, I'm like, no, there's rules and I understand that. But if you don't respectfully ask questions and say, well, can it be different? You know, it's almost like people are afraid to say, well, you know, can we do something in a different way? And I think in Africa and South Africa, that's what I appreciate. If you think about Africa as a cost center for IT for many, many fintech companies, call centers. Why? Because we're brilliant people, work hard, and unfortunately, Europeans can pay them half the salary, you know, so there you go. But yeah, I think that's part of what makes South Africa really awesome. You know, and it goes into Africa. I said to Nikki years ago, I was in Khartoum. A Dutch client invited me to do a program for one of the petrol companies or the oil companies. I think there is only one in Khartoum, but there you go. And I spent a week there, but I loved it. And what I said to Nikki is, when I walked in, it was one of the most safest cities in Africa that I've been to, was actually Khartoum, you know, and I didn't think it would be, but it was. But you walk on the street in the morning, everybody works. And I say work, and I say, you know, so they don't, you know, if their job is to make you a cup of coffee and you sit on a little log, but he has a little coffee shop that has a few coffees in these 4 logs, and you can sit down on the pavement on the log and he sells you coffee. That's the entrepreneurial spirit. which is great. I haven't been to South America. I've traveled a little bit to the east, been to Australia, but I mean that I think, and I've been to Ghana, I've been to a couple of other African countries, but it's a spirit that's with us, It's this, hey, why not? And out of why not comes a lot of innovation and comes a lot of energy. So yeah, I just really, really love working here. I mean, although I work with most of my clients are in Europe and America, but I think what they find in people with us is really that. So, Marcus, maybe your question on the political situation in South Africa. Well, I don't know if it's any better or worse than the political situation in America, So, so I think we were a couple of years ago with our previous president. There were the level of corruption in politics. There's always corruption, but I think the level of corruption was so bad that it was economically difficult to do business, to invest in South Africa. And I think the current president and unfortunately our ruling party has two factions. We have the old president faction and his buddies and friends, and there's court cases and but it's so intertwined. Will anybody ever go to prison? I very much doubt that. So, but I have a hope, if we can just get a government that's less and less corruption. I mean, there's still good business, good opportunities. So yeah, I think there is a future, and with what COVID taught us, I think, well, in the beginning in South Africa, we had one of the world's toughest lockdowns. I mean, you couldn't look out of the window. Okay, I over exaggerate, but I mean, it was really, I mean, you could go to the shop and buy food and come back home. That was it for a month. And we were like, yo, this is terrible. But if we didn't do it, because we hit winter, obviously, in end of May, June, July, and August, and everybody said in COVID, oh yeah, nothing to do with seasons. Well, now you in Europe will say, of course, it has a lot to do with seasons, And so we were like number 5 in the world. And we only have 55 million people. Now we're probably back to like number 14, and we're getting a rise of cases. We have some type of restrictions again, but again, good political leadership from our current government, and our current president, really steered that ship. And not everybody wasn't always popular, but I think did the right thing, So, yeah, I don't know what else I should say at this stage, Nikki.
I know. I have a question regarding the concept of Outerbox thinking. I'd like to go into this.
Sure.
What are the boxes that you see in South Africa? What are the boxes that you see in the rest of the world that you help people getting out of? Let's tell us a little about your work.
Okay. So there's two type of boxes. The one box is a bit more difficult to get out of than the other box. The one box is the system, and the system is big. So if we talk about a corporate system, an organization, sometimes we refer to it as culture. Culture can be easily can still be influenced, but I mean it's difficult. Countries' regulatory things are difficult to work with. But the box that you can work with is the box we set up in our mind. And as a coach, that's what I want to help people with and help companies with is, okay, that is one perspective of looking at something. What is the other perspectives? And people will say, Reinhard, well, I mean, this is the facts. And I say, okay, well, great. If I would ask that person, would they have the same facts? Well, maybe not. Well, let's explore it. And what if, so this is where the coaching comes in it's really challenging perspectives. Now, some things is difficult, but I mean, a lot of changes that you as an owner of a company or a department or whatever is the way you view things and the view of possibility. And that's the box that I would want to help people unlock.
Tell us more about it.
So funny thing is, I liked obviously the concept of the word out of the box, and when I started named the company in 2003 or 4, whatever, I thought, well, man, you can't name a company out of the box, that's too long. So I thought, well, let's just make a word, Outerbox, Google it, and there was nothing. There's a company called Outerbox, and they in the States, and I think they're advertising companies, so good for them. But I'm glad they didn't take Outerbox, So I think that the big thing is really helping. So I don't know what you want me to tell you about Outerbox or how I work. Is that what you want to know?
Yeah, cool. Tell us about how you work and how people approach you and the questions you ask to people to help them identifying their boxes, which is, I think, a good first step to get out of the box.
That is, I think you're right. So how do people approach me? Mostly people approach me because they heard of me, so I'm terrible. Unlike you, Nikki, I'm terrible with advertising, so, and I'm even worse with sales, so, so people sometimes ask me as a coach, because most of my work, even if I do the innovation work, comes from a coaching perspective. And people ask me, so how do you advertise yourself? And I say, well, because I also supervise coaches, I say, if you have, if you're a man, how did you get your urologist? And if you're a woman, how did you get your gynecologist? Did you Google it? No. I said, exactly, you asked your friend, who, yeah, sheesh, I have some problems. Can you recommend a urologist? You sort of, as a man, I think sometimes we're a little bit more cautious. I don't know. I'll ask my wife how the question goes with gynecologists. But the point is, it's a trust relationship. And in my profession, everything is about trust. So I get recommended, I'm as good as my next job, or my previous job. That's how I get business. Yes, I do, talks and stuff like that. But the biggest thing is one person telling another person. And I suppose in the service industry, I'm not selling cell phones, so in the service industry, those things are crucial. My son asked me the other day, we went to looked at something for his car, and he said, Dad, the chap said, oh yeah, it's going to cost so much and so much. And he asked me when we got home, do you think he was lying? And I said, yes, of course I thought he was lying. I said, in the meantime, I went to the other auto electrician, and I found out that he really was lying, but you can't build business on relationships that's not honest and ethical, and we know that for the big stuff, but it must be true for the small stuff too. So I believe in trust relationships with people. That to me is absolutely crucial. So I get approached.
Steering back to Africa, what are the things that people in Africa do you, from your observation, see differently than you work or you've worked with Silicon Valley, with ecosystems in the highly developed world? Although I'd see South Africa as pretty much developed, but from your perspective on what's happening in Africa, a lot of people talk about the next billion users, the NBUs, That's why Google and Facebook and Amazon are trying to cover Africa with internet access. We had a conversation yesterday with Toby Shapshak, and he said that's one thing that Africa should be aware of, that they don't become the data mining source for the Apples and the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. So going into the granular level of the entrepreneurial spirit of the company environment, the corporate environment, can you give us a little specifics about what's happening, the notions, the spirit in Africa and South Africa right now?
Well, I think Africa, sadly, probably from a business point of view, is probably more known for, how do you do business in Africa? Is you buy it, you pay somebody to do business in Africa, and I work with big companies unofficially. I know that officially that is never said, but it's true. But if you're going to do business like that, you got to remember somebody else is knocking at the door with a bigger wallet. You are only doing business. And in Africa, it's very dangerous. It's very fickle to do business like that, because now you pay your 10 euros to Mr. XYZ. But Mr. XYZ has a short lifespan in Africa, and he is replaced by Mrs. So-and-so, and then your 10 euros is worth nothing, So I think what is really, if you want to invest in Africa, and you should, is invest really in not window dressing positions. So if in South Africa we have BE as a big thing, you have to employ so many South African citizens, and we have a color racial quotas that it works on. But if you're going to do that, what we call window dress, you just employ people on a lower level, then you're not doing yourself a favor, and you're not doing the company a favor either. So really use and upskill people that you want to work with. So you're going to invest in the people, invest in the education, invest in training them. Remember, the only thing they don't know is the knowledge you have. Knowledge you can transfer, but they have other things you don't. But if you don't give them that opportunity and the knowledge, you will never get what they have. The way they look at the world, their energy, their spirit, their camaraderie. Their previous speakers spoke about ubuntu, So I would definitely encourage companies to actively invest in educating and training people if they invest in Africa. Because you're competing with China, and China have a big wallet. If yeah.
Interesting thought. Hey guys, unmute yourself. Ask questions if you have any. Let's keep this an open conversation.
Yeah, I have a few questions about the status of innovation in your country. So first, I would like to know, what is your specific approach to innovation? And is there a special ecosystem for innovation in your country?
Most companies I've worked with on innovation use the typical models like design thinking, like the Toyota way, Kaizen, sort of, if you talk about the way people think about innovation, it is on those terms. I don't think there's a specific, I have never come across a specific Africanized way of doing innovation. I've never seen one. Maybe there is one, I just don't know about it. I think what they're good at is, there's a saying, Johan might understand me because he's Dutch. There's a saying in Afrikaans that says, a boer maak 'n plan, which means a farmer makes a plan, and I think that culture is not just with white farmers, that's really with anybody, So if you say the specific platforms, is the same you would see in Europe or in America, the approaches. I mean, still a lot of innovation is done, you know, the consultants in South Africa are still the same. It's still McKinsey, Bain, you know, it's they're the smart guys that comes, well, now in COVID you can't fly in, you know, so now your attaché case have to stay at home. But yeah, the huge corporates in South Africa will still get the outside view in terms of innovation. Does that answer the question, Martin?
Yes, yes, a little bit, because why I'm asking, what we see in my country and also maybe in Europe, we talk a lot about innovation. Then we print it on nice folders and papers and so on, but really in the real life, nothing happened.
No, it doesn't. And I'll tell you, that tells me, when I did the research on my master's, I interviewed one of the CEOs of one of the big, there's 3 big insurance companies in South Africa, and they're big in Africa as well. And some of them are in India, big, they're fairly big players. And I said to him, I said, please tell me about innovation in your company. He said, Reinhard, you know what, I'll tell you a story. He said, because their offices were actually close to where I stay, 2 or 3 kilometers. And he said, we bought a office building and we put our innovation team off campus, as he called them. And, you know, they did the Google thing. You know, they had the smart office, the view, the sofas, the pinball machines, the best people. And I said, funny enough, Johan, his name was also Johan. I said, so Johan, what happened? You know, and he said, Reinhard, it wasn't that they came up with not bad ideas. They came up with brilliant ideas, brilliant ideas. I said, and he said, well, we sold the building and the team actually to our competitor. I said, why would you do such a thing? He said, Reinhard, they brought those ideas to the boardroom. And as soon as they said something, the board members said, yeah, but that wouldn't work here. And this is not the way we do things here. And that's the problem. And that changed the way I wrote my paper. And so when I do innovation with companies, I don't do any, you know, design thinking, because there's a lot of that. You know, you can buy it off the shelf, you know, Six Sigma, whatever it is. For me, innovation has a big component is leadership, the innovation of leadership, the attitude of the people who run the company need to appreciate innovation. So what stops innovation? What stops innovation is fear. You know, if we allow this new idea, what will happen to my job? If we allow this new idea, what would that mean for my department? You know, or, you know, egos stops innovation. It's not the ideas that's bad. I think all over the world, people have brilliant ideas. That's not what stops innovation. What stops innovations are egos and fears that stops innovation. So if I work with companies, that's what I address, not the how you do. Yes, people do ask me, can you show us how design thinking works? And I say, yes, I can show you what Tim Brown does when they do design thinking. But what you really need is your exco need to have a culture and a leadership culture that embraces innovation.
In the beginning, you said, and that intrigued me, a good leader is actually also a good coach, right? It's kind of a business coach is at the same time a good leader at the same time should be a business coach. How do you approach people? How do you approach these leaders to transform, how to become that?
I would encourage them to ask questions. So if leaders ask questions, stay quiet longer, they'll become better leaders. Because then they'll start noticing what's really happening. And then they would know what to ask. The more they talk, the least they observe, or that's not the right English word, but whatever the right English word is, you can't observe it when you're busy talking yourself, you know. So if you're quiet and you listen and you watch, you know, ask questions, that's the approach of coaching, which I think I do encourage leaders to have.
Okay. Johan, you had a question.
Nikki, yeah, but Reinhard, you just answered it, because I wanted to go a bit into this leadership aspect of your coaching and how you address, you know, very often the absence of leadership in companies and how it impacts innovation, but you just answered it. So actually, I don't have any more questions.
I'd like to flip it, because when you say that asking questions is a good skill of being a good leader, what are the questions that you think I should ask you or we should ask you?
Questions you should ask me. A good question to ask me is, how do I find success?
Okay. How do you find success?
Success to me is if you can go home at the end of the day and you have a house to sleep in and you have food in your stomach and you have peace with the people that you care most. You know, to me, that's success.
Okay.
The problem is a lot of us fall in, and me as well from time to time. I'm not professing to be the Dalai Lama here, and I don't. In my apologies, I probably pronounce it wrong, but I mean, it is. We get into this trap about success is your title, your next fancy degree, how many cars. You can only drive one car at a time. I've never met anybody on earth that can drive two cars at the same time. It is impossible. I've never seen that done, you know. But yet, you know, people, there's a coffee shop just down the road from me. And I stay in a fairly affluent area. I mean, there's many more affluent areas than mine in Cape Town. But I mean, it's amazing how people try to get the egos boosted. They need this ego boost because it's what they arrive in and the clothes they wear and, you know, the title they have and the next great deal they have. I know that's fake because those people come to me and they tell me their sad stories. And I'm like, I know that's not true because you sit in my office and sometimes you're in tears and you're a man that's 60 years old and you have all these things, but your family don't like you and you don't sleep peacefully at night, not because you're corrupt or anything else, but because you value the wrong things. Your terms of success is wrong.
Interesting.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, I need to apologize if I'm not clear. It's raining so heavily that I also didn't hear like 30% of what you were talking. But I really have a very profound question because it touches me in my work. I've always been interested in creativity. I've always wanted to kind of make sure that new things are developed based on the cultural foundation that exists in my part of Africa. And I would like to refer to your think about fear. What about personal fear and innovation? Because I'm thinking that if people are not self-assured, if they fear making a mistake, there is no innovation. Like in Uganda, Rwanda, the main thing is copying, copy. Very few people dare to try something new. And if they try something new, they tend to be not educated. The ones with diplomas are the worst. The ones who didn't go through schools, they are actually much more innovative. I just want your take on that.
No, you're right. I mean, Marcus referred to Ken Robinson in the beginning. One of his famous speech on education, he said the worst thing we do is we punish mistakes. And it is terrible. It's true. We stop learning if we start punishing mistakes. I have learned the biggest things. If you ask me, what is the biggest thing I learned in this year? the biggest thing I learned this year was when I did something wrong. So I have a supervisor as a coach. So I coach some people I coach aren't executives. So I coached this young man, and they sent him to me because he has a weight problem, you know. But obviously people don't just have weight problems. His doctor referred him to me, who happens to also be my doctor, you know. So he said, Reinhard, I said, listen, well, you know, I'm not a dietitian. He says, the guy doesn't need a dietitian. I can tell him what diet to follow. I said, okay, so what diet? As long as you're the doctor, I'll be the coach. And he said, no, I'll be the doctor. And, you know, this is because I lost a bit of weight, well, maybe about 20 kilograms or more about 2 or 3 years ago. And I did a diet works. And he said, I want him to do your diet. And I said, okay, well, it's not my diet, but he can do it. Can he safely do it? He said, yes, but I want you to coach him because that's the thing, it's the head. I said, okay, well, great. But I took, so the first 2 or 3 sessions, I went and spoke to my supervisor and I said, sheesh, the guy is not engaging. You know, what do I do? And my supervisor is one of the most amazing guys I know, Hugo. And Hugo said, Reinhard, you have to give him hope. You're trying to get too technical about this thing. What he needs is hope. Sheesh, and that is the big lesson I learned. People need hope. And 2 people need hope this year. And that guy sat in yesterday, was it yesterday? Yes, yesterday. He came for his last session this year. Lost 70 kilograms. But if I didn't speak to Hugo and my approach was wrong, and if I didn't say, Hugo, this is what I do, you know, and he said, Reinhard, well, what you should do is give him hope. He would never had the success story, you know. So yeah, you need to. Well, you're right. People fear mistakes. They shouldn't fear mistakes. But leaders must allow people to make mistakes. Now, and the thing is, people say to me, "But Reinhard, geez, we can't do it. We'll lose millions." But start with the small stuff. The thing is, you want to do it with nothing, and that doesn't work in your organization. You got to say, there's a budget we have that we allow people to make mistakes with. And so train your leaders and to say, well, let's help people. And if they lose a couple of 100,000, depending how big you know, if Google loses a couple of 100,000, it's not the end of the world, you know. If I lose a couple of 100,000, it's not the end of the world, but it'll be the end of my children's medical studies. So, yeah, but you got to budget in your company's budget, allow people to make mistakes because that's how you learn. And you don't punish them, you ask them, you know, okay, this went wrong. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, terrible. Hey, relax. We've all made mistakes. What did you learn? How would you do it different? Okay. Can we fix part of it? What can we do? So that's a culture thing you have to change.
How did you give him hope?
How did he give him hope? And I asked him that yesterday. He said, I saw success. And so what I did, when he lost 300 kilograms, 300 grams, I made a big thing of it. So every time he lost something, I said, chish, you know, and he was like, oh, yeah, but you know, or he would go back, you know, pick up a kilo or 2 or 3, and he would have emotional downturn. And I would remind him, and he would say like, oh, it's terrible. I said, well, yeah, maybe it is terrible. But remember, 2 weeks ago, you did a different decision and you lost 5 in the past month or whatever it was, you know. And I said, sure, that's true. So I keep people focus on the little victories. So it doesn't, you can't give people hope with nothing. You got to make it tangible. But even if it's little, small, 300 grams is small, but there's something. And he said to me, Reinhard, because I could see I was slowly moving. And that gave me hope. Yeah. So otherwise, it's just a inspirational talk about, yeah, you can do that. And yeah, I mean, I suppose there's, but that only goes that far, you know. The South African rugby team won. If those people who don't know rugby, it's okay. But I mean, for us, it's a big thing, you know. So we won the World Cup last year, and one of the things the coach said is he wants them to start winning, you know. So you can only breed success. You can talk so much to the soccer team about how great they are, but they need a string around a couple of victories. And so create hope in teams, in your companies, give them little successes and let them celebrate them. And then they start getting confidence. Hey, it's okay. I could do it. We could do this. So it's not like one big thing changes everything. It's little by little you grow the thing.
I like it. I love it. Anyone?
Well, I would look. I have another question about the topic of innovation. What we see in our country is that innovation is not taken really seriously. So I mentioned the people talk about it, yes, but nobody does something. But what we see, if you miss some grants, some big innovation, you lose jobs. Yeah. So, and how is the understanding in the case of business location in your area? Does the people understand the importance of innovation?
I think it's a universal question. The people who understand the importance of innovation is the people who drive innovation probably the most, but those are not always the people who buy innovation. You know, those are the people like me and you maybe sell the process and encourage the people. So the thing to realize, and I spoke to some of Nick de Priel, was one of our professors at Stellenbosch. He's now retired, but one of the things I've learned is, as much as I think innovation is needed, it must fulfill a need, you know. So I have to realize as a coach or consultant, and what is a need? A need is something where if I don't do something differently, there's danger to the company. Or a need can be, hey, we can make much more money. There's an opportunity. But innovation, you know, so you first have to have a need, and then you say, okay, well, we know there's a need, but the way we do things now is not going to address that need. So we need to change the way we do it. But sometimes we, from our innovation consultants, coaches, whatever we want to call ourselves, we want to sell the process of innovation, but our clients don't understand the need. And so we're selling a process, but they can't say, but how? Yes, because they've now heard about the value of innovation. They would love to have it on their little wall too, like Google has it on their wall. But let's be honest, if it doesn't make more money or stops them from losing money, why bother? So I think from our side as consultants or coaches in that field, we have to understand you have to link it to that. Mm-hmm. And then it's easy to sell innovation.
You can sponsor innovation. Beautiful. Any more thoughts, questions? There's a lot to process. I really enjoy your words.
Reinhard, a small question.
Yeah.
Do you see with COVID and everything that's happening, that more and more people need this kind of coaching, or how is like the demand for this type of coaching evolving in your region?
Well, I have to be honest, most of my coaching is probably out of my region. Most of my work sits in Europe and in Asia, because I work like I work with you now. In my region, I probably earn, I guess, 20% of my income comes from my own region. So in terms of COVID, or please rephrase that. Well, what do you mean with the situation with COVID in our region?
So it's like not only in your region, but what I see here is that with COVID, more and more people focus on their health, and I just read an article that 30% of people who are in like hospital because of COVID is because they were overweight. So normally your coaching in weight loss should like grow exponentially. And is it the case, or is it like still an area where people kind of are afraid to ask for help somehow?
Okay, Johan, you have to understand, I don't coach weight loss. I only took that because my doctor phoned me and said, please help, you can help this guy. So
Okay.
I'm not a weight loss coach. This was totally by accident. I just wanted to mention that because I want to mention the story of hope, which to me was very important. South Africa, I mean, we in the Western Cape has the highest cases of tuberculosis. So in the world, I think. I stand corrected, but I think so. People, yeah, they are high risk. Obviously, that's high risk. We don't really in the Western Cape have malaria. So malaria in South Africa is only really in the top of South Africa where you have a bit of malaria. So obviously, we have obesity like in America. We definitely have, especially on our Black population, and especially with the women in our Black population. Unfortunately, we have a huge obesity, and that is part of also, poverty. It's easy to starch is a cheap way of feeding yourself. But as we know, if you only have a starch-based diet, that's not very good for you. So we have that risk, and we have the risk that people are stay close together. So we have informal settlements still very much so. If you've Googled South Africa, you would know. I mean, what you see where I stay, I look over my computer 30 kilometers from my window. People stay in a thin little house with one room, and there's 5 or 6 people in that room, So that causes a problem. So we do have problems, but we can only solve those problems economically and educationally, and that needs a political will to do so. So.
Yep.
Coming back to the Ubuntu spirit, there is this saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And Ubuntu is maybe the godmother of community, right? This thinking of I am because you are basically just means that belonging means that there is something to belong to, and not that you as an individual are the star, but you are because the others let you. How much is this region, even though you said only a third of your revenue comes from Africa, how much is Africa living the spirit of being a community, of being strong together, of being humble?
No, well, I mean, Nikki, in a certain sense, how I met you was part of Ubuntu. So you know Dani Nell, I know Dani Nell, right? And I think a lot of Africa in a legal way, I think that way of Ubuntu is really great. We do look out for each other, in as, hey, I know this guy, he's great, I worked with a company, started to coach their it's a fintech company based in the UK, but I work with their Africa team, and I spoke to the leader, and I, started to talk to him, how's he, and he says his health is not great, and we just started, and I said, sure, what's wrong? And he said, I don't know, I've sourced a specialist, I can't get hold, I said, what's wrong? He says, I need a pulmonologist. I said, listen, I know the best pulmonologist in South Africa. He's a friend of mine. He says 3 houses for me. Here's his number. I'll phone him to see you. So he sees him the 15th of December. But that's not just me. A lot of people are like that in South Africa. And that spirit is not like bribery. It's really just looking out for each other. And I think that is a great spirit. And we're in Europe, and I say that in Europe because, I mean, I am a German citizen as well. I mean, I can take my little old passport. I can stay in Germany anytime I want to. I would but I don't. I like staying in South Africa. You know, we have problems, but every country has problems. You know, so. But I think in Germany, and I say that because I have a lot of German clients and I have a lot of German family. People are sometimes too cautious. It's like, oh, if I refer you to my friend, maybe he does something wrong, and my reputation then, and people do stuff wrong. Listen, I'm not going to refer you to the worst guy, and I have friends that's also doctors I won't refer you to, you know, but we all have good people, and they don't give you a kickback or whatever. But I think that Ubuntu spirit is great in South Africa amongst all races, which I really like.